Good evening, everyone. I'm Annette Insdorf, the moderator of 92Y's Real Pieces series. I usually talk about only motion pictures, but tonight I'm here because of my profound respect and affection for not only Dr. Ruth Westheimer, but Rabbi Peter Rubinstein. I cannot convey how much of a personal pleasure it is for me to be welcoming you tonight. It's partly because I'll be introducing two inspirational individuals whose lives exemplify what I consider to be a particularly Jewish humanism. But it's made even sweeter by the fact that this is the first time that I have stood on a 92Y stage in 19 months. Ever since March 2020, I've been doing Real Pieces remote. And while I appreciate Zoom, I'm grateful for all the people that I've been interacting with. Oh, seeing you all live right here, it's truly special. Even though there is a live streaming component to tonight's program, it's great that you are all live in this space with us. So tonight, we are co-presenting this program with USC Shoah Foundation. First, you will be watching Ruth, a Little Girl's Big Journey, directed by Eyal Resh. He served as the director of the Israeli Defense Forces Cinema Unit. He's also a graduate of the MFA Film Directing Program at Cal Arts in California. And this wonderful documentary short is produced by USC Shoah Foundation and Delirio Films. It brings to life the extraordinary trajectory of Dr. Ruth K. Westheimer escaping Nazi Germany. And I think that the film's emphasis on making choices makes this film terrific for younger viewers. The short is the latest example of the USC Shoah Foundation's critical work in bringing anti-hate education to new audiences. Ruth, a Little Girl's Big Journey, is a perfect primary level film in terms of Holocaust education. While it does not shy away from loss and loneliness, it also celebrates the resilience and hope that have characterized Dr. Ruth's life for the past 94 years. If the images in this film seem familiar to you, that may be because some of them were used as the animated portion of the terrific documentary from 2019, Ask Dr. Ruth, directed by Ryan White. After you watch this film, which is about, I think, 16 minutes, Dr. Ruth will be on this stage, and I think you all know who she is, trailblazing sex therapist, a teacher, especially at Columbia Teachers College, author of over 40 books, and she will be in conversation with Rabbi Peter Rubinstein. Since 2014, he is the director of Jewish Community and the Bronfman Center for Jewish Life at 92Y. He is also Rabbi Emeritus of Central Synagogue. Every Friday evening, 6 p.m., I've been online for Shabbos services ever since March 2020. Well, actually, they started a little past March, sorry. I just associated with the pandemic. He served as the senior rabbi for 23 years. They will take, by the way, your questions on index cards. So at some point, you will see ushers coming by with cards. Please write your questions on them. And finally, as you know, 92Y depends on supporters like you who share a passion for compelling conversations. So I'd like to thank Producers Circle members Jeff Schoenfeld and Matt Holbein for their support of tonight's program.
You think somebody is there?
Excuse me, I see everybody who's there, and you probably know all of them.
Most.
But
you have a list.
I do. So I welcome all of you, and I want to thank Annette Insdorf for that wonderful introduction and for this extraordinary movie about which we will talk. but as some of you who know Dr. Ruth very well, you don't say no to her for any reason. And so she asked me if I could announce the presence of certain people who are here. And if you are here, not that other people might be able to see you, we would ask you not to stand, but to just raise your hand so we know it. So firstly, we start with her family, her daughter Miriam, who we understand has taken excellent care of her and oversees her like a mother would oversee a granddaughter. But it's reversed in this case. So Miriam is here, along with Ruth's grandson, Ari, and his wife, Hannah, who's here as well. I've mentioned Annette Insdorf and her husband, Mark, who actually comes and helps at times to teach. A special person in her life, along with all the rest, is Hope Leichter, who is her doctoral advisor for her
dissertation advisor.
Doctoral thesis advisor, dissertation advisor, who's here with her friend, the actor David Lanson. And we have Harold Koplowitz and Linda, friends not only of Dr. Ruth, but of mine as well. Jeff Tabak and Marilyn from the Museum of Jewish History. And Patty Kenner, who is a supporter of the museum and friends of both of us, I would think. Sarah Lees, a friend as well. And although she's not here in person, but very much in mind, the actress Tova Felsher, who worked as an actress in the play Dr. Ruth, in Becoming Dr. Ruth in the Hamptons. And that play will be opening at the museum in December 16th.
You have to say which museum.
The museum, there's only one museum when it comes to Ruth, the Museum of Jewish Heritage. She asked that you go on the website. There are going to be previews that you buy your tickets.
December 4, and then December 16, a big gala.
So,
because the museum needs money. Jeff Tabak, did you hear what I said?
So I think we've covered all those who are special to her and who are here. And she asked me one other matter, which I was very happy and willing to accede to. She said from Frankfurt am Main, as an Orthodox little Jewish girl, we should say the Shehechianu together to celebrate those people who are here that are special, and the fact that we're all here in this extraordinary institution. So if you know it, let's say it together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. And for those of you who may not know Hebrew or may not even understand what the prayer is, this is a prayer we say, a blessing we say every time there's an important moment in our lives. We thank you, O God, for having given us life, for having sustained us, and for having brought us to this moment to which we should all say together, Amen.
Hold it 1 second. I want you to realize that this is a Reform rabbi that I have chosen to say the Shehechianu. So that makes me very happy. Did you all see that he put on a kippah? Did you see it? Okay.
Actually, it's not unusual for me to wear a kippah when I say prayers, as those of you who are here, and there are many here from Central Synagogue, where I was rabbi. So, Ruth, it's really wonderful and a pleasure and a real joy, honor to be with you this evening. You have said, since I left the pulpit in 2014, that we should have lunch. That never happened, so this is a fulfillment of the promise that we should get together.
And we already I promised that we are going to do something at Central Synagogue for all of the wonderful services and the legacy that you have given all of us by retiring, but still being there. Like in the sermon, the rabbi was here, but he had to go home. Right?
Most often may still be here.
But the rabbi quoted you, and I remembered it last Friday. He quoted you in his sermon that we Jews are responsible one to the other.
Well, obviously he listened to that sermon because he asked me for it, and I wasn't sure what he was talking about.
See?
But we figured it out, and I sent it to him. So I'd like to kind of transition from the movie that we just watched, this extraordinary movie. I mean, so technically and wonderfully done, and really encompassing you in such exquisite ways. You have some sense of the origin and the agenda of that movie. Why was that movie made?
Okay, here is what I have to tell you. In the documentary about me, which is now on Hulu, when they told me there will be animation, I was horrified. I thought they're going to make me look like Mickey Mouse, or they're going to do some terrible things. What do you mean, animation? As it turns out, the same Israeli director who did the animation did this film for the Shoah Foundation, and I am very pleased because it's exactly what I wanted to happen when we talk to children about World War II, about being an orphan, about all of those horrible things that all of you know about. I had to make sure that it's not scary. And this film really did it. The film shows voyage. There are many other trips that I took, but it made it, I love the film he did. He used a little bit from the documentary, but he made a film that is definitely for children. It does not talk, if you remember when I talk about the children that came from Bergen-Belsen, I didn't even say Bergen-Belsen.
No, you didn't.
I just said they must have seen sad things because they were so sad. And so I wanted to show that many more children came to Switzerland. One more thing important. For the Kindertransport, right now there is an exhibit in Frankfurt at the Library of Congress, like ours in Washington. There are 6 children from Frankfurt being featured. I'm one of them. I don't go to Frankfurt right now. I stay right here in Washington Heights. But very important that we talk about that. If I had been, you heard that they decided that I'm going to that group with Orthodox Jewish children to Switzerland. Holland, Belgium, France, each took children. Switzerland took 300. Sad to say, America and Canada took very few. If I had been on the Kindertransport to Holland, Belgium, or France, I would not be alive. I was on the Kindertransport to Switzerland. Whoever made that decision, I will never know. And that's how I'm alive, because the children to Holland, Belgium, and France did not make it. However, 3,000 children went to Great Britain, despite the fact that there were dark clouds on the horizon. And all those children who went to Great Britain and the ones from Switzerland survived. Right. So my then trip to Israel, it's nice for a children's movie to see that big ship and little Carola, which from that point on in Israel, they told me you can't be Carola. You have to make a Hebrew name. I took my middle name, right. Ruth. I don't know if Dr. Carola could have talked about sex like I do.
Not quite with the excellent accent that you have.
But so I'm very pleased because I believe that it is going not to arouse anxiety. Ask Harold Koplowitz if he agrees with me, that it will not arouse anxiety in children seeing that, but will say how important it is that we became servants of the Swiss children. We had to serve them because we were there as charitable orphans. And there are many, many things
So you partnered with the USC Shoah Foundation to do this, and so why don't you just for a minute talk about the role of that foundation and how that partnership emerged in order to make this film?
I tell you how. Because Stephen, who is now leaving the foundation, but luckily he was there when he talked about talking to the Museum of Jewish Heritage. Eventually, in another year or 2 years, we'll have a special floor, second floor, for information for children. That's how this came about. When I talked to Stephen, I said, I will do that because I have some books which you are going to plug in a moment for children. So one is called Leopold. That's about a turtle who, careful, in today's world, we have to be careful what I say now. I did that book before the virus, and that book talks about a turtle a turtle only moves if it takes a risk.
Right.
I'm careful about saying that today because of the virus. But before the virus, I said that the turtle had to learn, and I use a grandson learning how to play baseball, that he has to take a risk in order to be courageous. So that's about the turtle.
So I'm fascinated because you're renowned for and known for speaking to adults. And then you suddenly transitioned into writing books for children, movies for children. How did that happen and why?
Because basically I remember my grandmother, Frankfurt am Main, where we lived together. My father, her husband had passed away, I didn't know him. I remember that she said, "You are so short, you should be a kindergarten teacher. You can fit into those little chairs." So I was a kindergarten teacher, I was a director of a kindergarten. That's how I did these books, like this one. But more important...
This is Dr. Ruth, Grandma on Wheels.
Right. More important for the why and for us today. The book Crocodile, You Are Beautiful, it talks about for little children, and it talks about that I'm telling little Ameisen, little, what is that, the little animals, tiny little ones, you should be pleased, ants. Mm-hmm. You should be pleased that you are an ant, because if you cooperate, you can build bridges and houses. So that fits into any educational program that talks about diversity. Mm-hmm. And then I did the book, the graphic novel for children a little older.
I am her assistant.
Right. And the graphic novel, interesting, I talk about my father being taken by the Nazis. I do not mention Auschwitz, but I do talk about the bad people. I talk about the synagogue burning. But then also in the Jewish tradition, it says, a lesson taught with humor is a lesson retained. And so right away I talk about my going to a country fair with 2 of my 4 grandchildren, and we want to go on a ride. We get measured. They can go on and I'm too short. So I right away know that children will remember that. Especially it's for little children. I mean, for children who might be little in growth. Ask Harold Koplowitz if that's correct.
We can plug the Child Mind Institute too. You keep throughout the books you've written, there are 2 memories of your dad that kind of emerge. One was on the film when he turned around and smiled and waved at you, which was a recurring theme in your life when you needed it. And the other was how he would take you to synagogue in Frankfurt.
In Frankfurt am Main,
right.
Even so I was a girl, usually girls were not permitted with the men downstairs, but I was an only child, so I was permitted. And my father, every Friday night, took a little money in the vest pocket of his jacket, just enough for an ice cream, because he wouldn't have touched anybody once the Sabbath came. So I, every Friday night, went with my father to the synagogue. And I do remember, I didn't write that because it's a little frightening, but here I can say it. I do remember that in November 1938, when we walked home, a gentleman, I don't remember who it was, said, Julius, my father's name, we have to leave. Horrible things are happening here. And my father said, tomorrow nothing is happening. It's a Catholic holiday. A Catholic, in Germany, one of the Catholic holidays. That's the night, the morning, that my father was taken to the labor camp. Like I said, it was not concentration camp, it was labor camp. Dachau, there was another one, Buchenwald, the one nearer to Frankfurt. Then came the postcard that my father wrote to Frankfurt, Brahmsstraße 8. That's where we lived, in the north end of Frankfurt. Lower middle class German, Jewish, Orthodox parents. That it said, my father wrote that postcard that in order for him to leave the labor camp, I have to go to Switzerland. I didn't want to go, I did say that here. I had all of the dolls and I had roller skates and friends, and I went to a wonderful school, Samson Raphael Hirsch.
Explain why it was necessary for you to go. There was a reason why you had to go to Switzerland.
There was a reason what?
Well, apparently a child had to be out of the country.
No, he said,
yes.
If I'm out of the country, he can come back from the labor camp to Frankfurt. I had no choice. I do remember that postcard. And that's really what happened. They brought me to the railroad station. I do kind of remember maybe a little bit that I tried to smile. And that to the mother and grandmother. On the railroad station in Frankfurt am Main at the time, you didn't see a man because all of the men had been taken to labor camps. But you saw the mothers and grandmothers.
But that's so interesting because you remember what his wave to you meant to you, and therefore your wave to your mother and grandmother on the station came out of that memory that you had been carrying with you.
Yes.
So the memories that you had as a child, the ice cream cone and your father waving to you, and then
the importance of education, that nobody can take that away from you.
Right, and that kind of played out within your life over and over again at different chapters of your life, and you harken back to those kind of creative memories. And in some way, it gave root to your thesis, your doctoral thesis, in which you studied the children on that Kindertransport to see, how did they do?
Okay. Look how interesting. I did a study of the children who went to Switzerland, the ones that I could reach. And I did reach a lot of them. How interesting. None of them committed suicide. None of them became clinically depressed. None of them really fell by the wayside. Nobody else became Dr. Ruth, that's true. However,
there is only one Dr. Ruth.
Peter, there's something very interesting. All of these children that I followed from the Kinderheim, from that orphanage, they all lived for the first few years of their lives in an intact family. They lived like I did, a mother, a grandmother, a father, the others also. So the early socialization, the early years of our lives were in an intact and wonderful, in my case particularly, Orthodox Jewish family. And I do believe that this is what carried us through to becoming orphans and being alone. Now, at the time, I could have stayed in Switzerland and become a kindergarten teacher. I was accepted in the kindergarten seminary, but by that time, I was already very much of a Zionist, and I schlepped. Anybody knows what that is? Hope, you know what schlepping means?
Yeah.
I carried the other children along too, with my enthusiasm about dancing. That's how Miriam became such a wonderful dancer. and about an ideal of helping a country, having Jews have a country of their own. I never believed that I would not live in Israel. I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to be here with you, Peter, at the Y 92nd Street and being Dr. Ruth. But I was very much concerned to be a member of of a kibbutz. I thought I'd be my whole life on a kibbutz. Didn't work so well.
You know, I want to come to that, but before we leave the subject of raising children in intact families and the memories that they have, when you talk about the Holocaust, or when one talks about the Holocaust, we have a film that's geared to younger children. You have books that are geared to younger children or to children. What's the difference between talking about the Holocaust to young children and talking about it to teenagers or young people in their 20s?
I think you have to be very sensitive not to have a child have a nightmare. If you talk about Baba Yar, or if you talk about any of those horrible, horrible things that have happened. So there has to be a fine line, and I hope I did that by saying being an orphan was terrible, but I did not mention the word death camp.
Right.
I did not mention the word anything that would make a child wake up at night and cry. So I hope I succeeded.
So that's really a lesson to us,
Yes.
Who are in religious schools and on college campuses as to how we should talk about the Holocaust.
Yes.
And when you look back on your life in these years, in Switzerland and Germany and then in Switzerland, are there things that you discovered about yourself along the way that kind of shaped who you are now?
That make a change?
No, are there things you discovered about yourself during those years, in the Kindertransport and the orphanage, and then later on as you traveled to Palestine, things that you found in yourself, that you discovered in yourself that have kind of shaped who you are today?
I think so. Now my second sentence to you, Peter, is don't analyze me. I'm not going to talk about all of the marriages I've had. They were all successful, especially Fred Westheimer, the last one, for so many years. So I do think it shaped me. I do think it gave me the chutzpah and the drive to do something to make a dent in this world, because I survived and so many children did not.
Yeah.
So I think there was something in me that pushed me, that drove me. I did not know it would be talking about sex from morning till night. But I'm not complaining that that's the career I had, and that's the life I had. But I think that my 2 feet are still, I'm not an Orthodox Jew, as you know. I belong to a Reform, and I belong to Conservative with Miriam, with Rabbi Katz, whom you know, and
your own synagogue.
And the synagogue.
Hebrew Tabernacle.
Hebrew Tabernacle, as long as it still exists.
And you have your unassigned, assigned seat at Central Synagogue.
But Central Synagogue, I have to tell you, you tell Angela. Every Friday night, Miriam puts me on Zoom, and I watch Central Synagogue.
Yeah, you also wanted me to mention that you made me promise that I would tell Angela that you and I are going to do a program on Judaism and sex.
Yes.
All right. So everybody.
Only if you read the book, Sexually Speaking. No, the book is New York University.
Judaism and religion.
Heavenly Sex. Heavenly Sex. I say it right?
Yes,
Heavenly Sex. Sexuality, the Jewish tradition, just became a classic, will never be out of print. That's very nice. That's very nice. So another time, you invite all the 92nd.
I will invite everybody who's here tonight.
you invite them to
Right.
come to Central Synagogue.
I promise, I promise.
Okay.
So let's skip ahead. So you came to Palestine. You were certainly on a kibbutz at the beginning, and then you decided to join the Haganah.
I didn't decide to join the Haganah. That was an act of heroism on my part. Everybody on the kibbutz joined. And by that time, I was already in Jerusalem studying to be a kindergarten teacher. Everybody I knew joined some unit. How they found out that I could be a good sniper, I do not know. But I can put 5 bullets in that red circle. I've never killed anybody, but if I would have to, I could have. And I also was a runner because I was short and very fast. So I was in the Haganah, and here is another lesson to be taught at the 92nd Street Y. On June 4th, 1948, my birthday, my 20th birthday, I came back from Shmirah. Shmirah means watching
guard duty
over the rooftops in Jerusalem, watching the Israelis checking each car for weapons that came into Jerusalem. I came back to the Beit HaChalutzot, to the girls' home where I lived, and it was my 20th birthday. The alarm sounded. I knew what it meant. Go down to the Mertav, go down to the cellar. But I had just been given a book, and I left it in my room. Big mistake. I went to the room. I thought, who knows how many hours do I have to sit in the cellar again? I went upstairs to get the book, and when I came back to the lobby, a pagaz, a cannonball exploded, killed 2 girls next to me, wounded me very badly on both legs, and I was lucky. I went to Hadassah. There was no bed for me, so they put me into a room filled with male soldiers. It was wonderful. I played chess. We kept the morale up until one nurse, I don't know, she must have been awful. She said, a girl can't be here. There was nothing I could do. My feet were, after an operation, I was on a shelf because there was no bed. So they put me into a room upstairs with women who were complaining, ay, 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 oi, vai, voi. So luckily for me, there was a wonderful, I'll tell you.
Yes.
There was a
just
good
between
looking,
us.
There was a very good-looking nurse, a male nurse, who had been a student of medicine in Romania. I made believe, I can't believe that I'm telling that at the Y to Peter. Peter, I made believe that I couldn't feed myself. Nonsense. My hands were perfectly all right. My feet were problems. So he had to feed me 3 times a day. We had a wonderful love affair. So I never thought I would not be living in Israel, but I'm not complaining. Until this virus, I went to Israel every year. I speak Hebrew. Miriam went to Israel and lived also on a kibbutz and later in Haifa. And I did, until recently, went to Israel. Right now, I don't know if I can go. We'll have to. 93 and a half, I have to be conscious of that. But I want to tell you something. I just got, now I'm bragging. Everybody listen. I got an honorary doctorate from Ben Gurion University. I have a few from this country. I'm happy, Lehman College and some others, but I got Ben Gurion. I also raised enough money, not for the 92nd Street Y, but for a scholarship at Ben Gurion University and in psychology, not sex therapy, it's too narrow. And so that, they want me to come, eventually I will go. What pleases me there is that now Bedouin girls are studying at Ben Gurion University. So I hope that Bedouin girls will get part of that scholarship, because in Switzerland, they didn't let me go to high school. They made me be a maid, all of us, the girls.
Right.
Only the boys could go to high school. That's how I had a boyfriend, thank God. I still see him every year when I go to Israel. And he gave me his books to read, which he chose, you know. And
In the stairwell.
right, and he also sent me messages. So, very important. So I didn't think I would not live in Israel, but I'm very concerned about that. I just saw 2 days ago, and I'm now on the board of Ben Gurion, I saw a documentary about climate change. Fascinating, because that documentary reminded me that the lake Hulu, Miriam?
Hula.
In the lower part of the Galil, was like a swamp and had malaria. But even before I got to Israel, they already had to clear it up.
They drained it.
And they finished with the malaria in Israel. So that's interesting. The other very interesting thing that came out these days, talking about climate change, during the time when Jerusalem was cut off from the rest of Israel during the Independence War. I was in Jerusalem. We got 1 glass of water a day to brush teeth, to cook, to anything, to wash. So I already then realized what climate change has to do if we don't even have water. So it gave me many lessons to live.
Yeah, and there, in fact, at Ben Gurion, there's an entire new program studying water and ecology, especially in the Negev, which is so important.
Right.
So I want to move on because your book, which I loved, and this is for adults, called "The Doctor Is In." You set forth certain life lessons, and the first chapter is you talk about joie de vivre, right? And that's like a heartbeat through everything you do, the joy of life. Even in the darkest moments, you can find that. Can you talk a little bit about that as it plays out in your life?
And I, again, like what I just mentioned, believe that this is because of my wonderful upbringing, 10.5 years of my early life, that I have an appreciation of that joie de vivre. I lived also in Paris for a few years. That helped too. So this joie de vivre, even during difficult times, helps me to see the good things in life. Now, if you ask me, what's the best thing in your life? Ari, listen carefully. The best thing in my life is 4 grandchildren. Liora, New York University Law School, right now, that's why she's not here. Ari is here, 2 in Canada, Michal and Ben. And Ben got such good grades first year at university that I bought him a guitar.
Yes.
So I have that ability to say sad things are happening. Look, all of us have had sad things now happen. But that we have the ability to say, let's make the best of it.
And you know, when you talk about that in your book, you say, Hitler lost and I won.
Yes.
Right? When you talk about your grandchildren.
When I talk about the 4 grandchildren,
yes.
I say Hitler lost and I won because I have 4 grandchildren.
So there are other life. And as you honestly suggest, they're all extraordinary.
I what?
They're all extraordinary, these grandchildren of yours. They're terrific young people, correct? Your grandchildren.
My grandchildren?
Yes.
What?
No, they're terrific. They're
Oh,
extraordinary.
the best in the world.
The best in the world.
What do you mean? That's why I couldn't hear you.
That's right.
The best in the world,
Yes.
there's nothing else.
Superlative, right?
Oh,
Superlative.
right.
No, I think it's, there were other things, other lessons. As a matter of fact, if you go just through the table of contents, the chapters and the names of the chapters, including always move forward, embrace your passions and your beliefs. But what I found most fascinating is how you should conceptualize parts of your brain to keep the sad emotions, don't get rid of them, but make the joy front and center. And that's something that apparently you're very deliberate about. Is that something that you would teach your patients?
I hope that they got some of those lessons, because I had so many people. But don't forget, what I did is this psychosexual therapy is a behavior therapy. It's a short term. It is not like a psychoanalysis. It's short term and it concentrates on the sex life. But I was very fortunate. I got good advice. First of all, I got very good training by Dr. Helen Singer-Kaplan. She was a foremost sex therapist who wrote the first book on sex therapy. And I was with her for 2 years being trained twice a week. And then I stayed 3 more years in her group, helping to train others. That's also where I met Harold, not in Helen Singer-Kaplan's program. Linda, don't worry. I met him in a program on behavior therapy, Fensterheim, who wrote the book, Don't Say Yes When You Mean to Say No. That's a nice lesson.
Well, it's also, one of the things you point out is the importance of being honest. In other words, you would tell a couple that's not doing well together to either fix it or end it, right?
Not only that, I just had an experience now. I don't do therapy anymore. Let younger people do it. But somebody called me, they wanted me to see a couple. They would have flown them in a private plane from Florida. When I heard the story, I said, don't waste your money. There is nothing I can do for you. Yeah. If they didn't have sex for so long, no private plane, no money, nothing is going to help. But I want to tell you something, Peter, as a rabbi. I have some expertise because of my background of Orthodox Judaism.
Right.
And Rabbi Lubavitch, Rabbi, first of all, the rabbi even knew me. And I didn't have to stand in line, but I got the dollar, I still have it. And he said, continue doing what you're doing. Very nice. The little rabbi was already sick in Brooklyn, and I have the dollar he gave me. But one of the Lubavitcher rabbi gave me good advice, and I listened. He said, do not open an office in Brooklyn. They will not come to see you if somebody else can see them walk in. Mm-hmm. Stay in Manhattan, they will come to you. They did. So I listened very carefully when people give me advice.
You know, when you were reflecting on the pandemic and the state that we're in, you said something very direct, which is don't keep thinking of the past, move forward. And then you gave some advice in terms of the people during this pandemic who are looking for the partner with whom they want to live, they should be living a life. And what are some of the things that you would say to a person who seems a little stuck in just finding a partner to be with, to marry?
We live in very difficult times. But look, luckily, we are getting out of it. Last night, Carnegie Hall I wasn't there, but I saw the news. Carnegie Hall was filled with people listening to classical music. We have to take those things and hope for the best. So I would say to people who are alone, make sure when this is over that you are going to the Y, that you participate in activities, that you go and listen to Peter's lectures and to some other people. So do something. Don't just sit there and complain. That's, I think, the main message. Difficult times right now, no question. But do something about it to make it better for yourself.
You also said, and don't be so choosy.
And I said, don't be so choosy. I want people to get married. So don't stay there until you are 45 to hope that somebody will come on a white horse and with a lot of money. Make sure that you take some reality and in order not to be lonely.
So I understand that you have a redux of a book that you've already written and called The Art of Arousal, and that you've
You have
had...
to say arousal with more arousal. So
I have a really funny story to tell you, but I am not going to tell it to you publicly.
So The Art of Arousal, Abbeville is the publisher, approached me. It came out a few years ago. They want to get some additional stories, and it will be out for Valentine's Day. But guess what? I told them, if you want me to talk about sex, you have to get me a few stories on Chinese sex. Because my old book, Art of Arousal, didn't have any Chinese sex. So now I'm blushing when I talk. Don't look at me for a moment. Now in the new story is about one man with an enormous penis and another one masturbating. So it's going to be a wonderful book to plug for Valentine's Day.
Now I can't wait to see it.
You get it for free.
I'll get it for free.
See me blush. Did we plug Tova Feldshow?
Yes, I think we did,
we
right? December 4th.
December
4th for
check
previews.
The website. December 4, I think.
And then December 16th is the gala.
December 16th, a big gala. Jeff Tabak, am I right? Yes. Okay. Jeff Tabak, will you tell them that I plugged the museum?
And for every ticket they buy, we get a percentage at the Y, correct?
No.
No.
You get me for free. Peter and I got you for free.
Oh, my God.
So that's wonderful.
So we're coming to the end of our time before I ask you some questions that people have submitted. But even at age 93, you write an entire chapter called Recognize That It's Never Too Late. And you conclude by saying, I'm still becoming Dr. Ruth. And what would you say to people who would say, no, I can't do, my body is telling me that it is too late. I have reasons, just psychologically or physically that I can't do anymore. What would you say to that person?
I would say to them, hope like they listen. I would say to them, take my example. I taught now at Teachers College, Columbia University, for 7 years. I love it. I love working with hope. I love the place. I went to my doctor, Cohen. I said, I think I need a note that I cannot do it anymore. So you have to be, on the one hand, realistic. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, look what happens to me. I have Peter for free tonight, and already I got you for free for Central Synagogue.
True.
To pay back for all of the Friday nights of wonderful music. That's what I mean by being a little realistic. So there are things that I know I cannot do right now.
Yeah. So, this is I wanted to end our part of the discussion before I ask you the questions with this one. One of the questions that's very often asked at the end of Shoah lectures is, what is your message to the future? What are your hopes for the future? And what are your hopes for us?
Well, my hope for the future, I just proved to you that at the age of 93 and a half, I listen very carefully to the research on climate change. So you have to be with the world of now, not to forget the past, but to say also to know your limitations. Mm-hmm. So I'm very lucky. Any doctor visit, Miriam keeps track, any Zoom I have to do. I can only talk. I don't know how to touch any of those mechanical things because they just don't like me. So I don't touch them. So to be realistic about your limitations. Mm-hmm. But not to sit there despair, but to say, here, I'm at the 92nd Street Y. I already have a new date Peter for the next one, for Central Synagogue.
And that gives me something to look forward to.
Right.
So one of the questions is, the first one is, out of all your accomplishments and achievements to this day, which are you most proud of?
Which one?
Which accomplishment and achievement?
Like I said before, applaud again. 4 grandchildren. Applaud.
That was a setup. This is a little bit
Wait,
more...
I want to say something else.
Yes.
If somebody would have told me that I would become Dr. Ruth, that when I started the radio program, maybe some of you remember that, Sexually Speaking, and I gave some money to a beggar in front of 30 Rockefeller Plaza. He was with dark glasses as if he was blind. And I gave him some money and I said, go and get a sandwich. He said, thank you, Dr. Ruth. I knew I had made it. That's a true story.
Really? You cured his blindness.
You know that in the Jewish tradition it says, a lesson taught with humor
That's right.
is a lesson retained.
Yes.
I could not tell you a joke. Not only that, most jokes I don't get because I'm a German Jew. Yekkes don't get jokes. However, I can use humor when I want to make a point.
And you do it very well. So this is an interesting question. If you choose not to because you think it's too political, I'd understand, we'd understand. What is your advice to all the people of rich countries of the world who are reluctant to take in refugees, who are escaping war, poverty, and domestic violence?
Terrible. Terrible. Look at me as an example. If I had not been taken in to Switzerland, I would not be alive. So what's happening right now on the border and what's happening when I see the children, very, very sad. I have stayed away because I talk about orgasm and erection all day long, even in front of Peter. So I have stayed away from politics. Patty Kenner, where are you? I know she's not happy about that because she's constantly with politicians. I have to stay away from politics because I want to continue talking about sex. But others have to stand up to be counted. I vote. I've never not voted. But others have to stand up to be counted. And especially some of the things that are happening these days are very, very sad. But right away when I say very sad, I also say, don't forget that yesterday Carnegie Hall was filled with people and classical music. So that's how I talk to myself.
Yeah. So this question is also interesting. It's interesting how so many of these questions are asking you to draw on your own experience. But this is from a pediatrician who says he has a patient that had a similar story. He's orphaned, running, crossing borders to escape horrible situations. How can I support these patients, and how can I help them become resilient like you?
Okay, so the first thing to do, please, even though you're a pediatrician, make time so that that patient who trusts you has the time to talk to you. If you don't have the time, which happens to many of you professionals, make sure you combine it with some rabbi. The rabbis are cheap. Listen carefully. Some of them don't get paid at all. So make sure you make a team with a rabbi, woman rabbi, man rabbi, whatever it is, so that they can help you to give the time, because here it's important, the word time, for that troubled person.
Yeah. I'm wondering, and I think you mean it this way, but I would add that if that person is not Jewish, that a priest or a minister, a clergy person would helpful. And it's an.
I want to tell you a story about a minister. I wanted to learn some more practical experience, so I went every Saturday to a counseling center in Paramus that was led by a priest. He just passed away, Finbar. And in order to learn therapy, in order to learn how to work with families. And when I found the priest flirting with a lot of women. Not me, I was married. But when I found him flirting, I said, you better go teacher's college and get yourself a doctorate, because I can see you're not going to stay a Catholic priest. He did. He went to teacher's college, he got a doctorate. He was a very good teacher and writer lately, and he loved me. But what I did was to give him the best advice that I could think of.
Which you do so many things, and among them now you're doing career counseling, which I think is very helpful, especially for people who haven't figured out what they really should be doing.
Right.
And I think part of that just comes from your ability to be straightforward and honest, which I think is to be celebrated.
Yeah, because I can say, Peter, I can say to somebody, I do not know. You have to go to a psychiatrist to figure out. First of all, any woman, let's give them a little bit something on sex.
Okay.
Any woman that came to me and said, painful intercourse at menopause, I didn't give her a second appointment before she went to a gynecologist to get a lubricant. Any man who had difficulties obtaining or maintaining an erection, I didn't give them a second appointment before he went to a urologist, because sometimes it is not a psychological thing, sometimes it's a physical issue. And I think that helped me in my career to be Dr. Ruth.
Yeah. It's fascinating, I think, for so many reasons, including others that you share in your book, but we'll have people read it. Do you think the United States has made any progress with sex education and understanding, or gone backwards?
Say that again. What about
Do you
sex
think the
education?
United States has made progress?
I think we have made progress. If we can sit at a 92nd Street Y and talk about orgasm, we have made progress. Not enough yet, but we have to know where the limits are, and we have to be careful about those limits.
So
For example, in schools, sex education, anybody who's starting a class like this has to talk to the parents first, so that the parents know what your lesson plan, what are you going to cover, so that they don't think that we are going to teach kids that everything is okay. So we have to teach about little ones, about privacy, nobody letting to touch them, and we have to make sure that everybody is sexually literate.
So my 10-year-old son is here today. What are the most important lessons about the Holocaust do you feel children need to know or think about?
Okay, first of all, it's going to cost you some money. Right tonight, go on Amazon and get the book right here of the graphic novel, and that's not about sex. First read that graphic novel, and then read a book about sex, but make sure that you tell your child, you can ask me anything. If I don't know the answer, I will get you the answer. I'll get films, I'll get books, and but that it's not such a big secret, so that people are worried about talking about it. If it's a personal question, if a child says, "How is your sex life?" I say, "Next question, please."
So one more question of substance is, what do we do about anti-Israel hatred?
Oh boy, that's for another evening.
Yeah, that's for another evening.
That's for another evening, but it's very worrisome.
So I want to just conclude with two comments that have been written on this before I bring this evening to a close, this formal part of the evening. And there will be an opportunity, I think, for people who want to come talk to you or meet you to gather.
Time.
Next time, or okay. So
that's because I'm not tired. I'm not tired. It's just because of the virus.
Okay. So one says, "You are a blessing and a joy to see and listen to. Thank you." And the other one says, "Your spirit, positivity, and boundless hope seem to be an intrinsic part of your soul. Is it really possible for people who aren't imbued to learn these traits, the traits of hope, goodness, positivity.
Yes. Not only that, first of all, watch the movie on Hulu. Second, come to the Museum of Jewish Heritage and see Tova Feldschuh. Third, come and see Peter and me doing something for Central Synagogue.
So those are the assignments that you've given. I just want to conclude by saying, Ruth, you know, it's always extraordinary for me to be in your presence. Every time I'm with you, I have the desire to become a better person. And I do that because I see you always doing more for people, helping people, and yourself being aware of how you yourself can grow and become Dr. Ruth. So we thank you for being here and just wish you Godspeed and a great 5782.
And we can kiss.
Thank you.
Ask your wife if we can kiss. Ask your wife if we can kiss later.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I chose you. Thank you.